What is going on, everybody? My name is Thor. Welcome back to the world of Briggs, and let's talk about the Golden State, California.
Thank you, Thor. California has been taking a lot of flack for some time now about the way the state is running, and to be honest, they deserve 90% of it. At least the people running the states and local governments deserve it. California has two classes of residents currently, the wealthy and the people watching YouTube channels like this one trying to find a better place. Now, I love California. At least I loved my old life I had in California before I moved to Oregon. I left it because it wasn't worth the price anymore. It's not that I couldn't afford the standard middle-class California lifestyle. I could. I just feel I wasn't getting what I was paying for in a way. It's sort of like this. You could be making a couple $1,000,000 a year. Are you going to buy an SUV for $100,000 when you can get the same SUV for $30,000 someplace else? No. If you do, it's called being stupid with your finances, and that's what it kind of got to the point for me. I felt I was being stupid with my finances for living in California. Now, before we get rolling on this one, a little disclaimer. California, my birth state, has some great things about it. It adds more to the US economy than probably 5 or 10 states combined. It depends on which state you throw in there. Entertainment is unmatched in the United States, maybe in the world. I say maybe because you never know what's going on in Liberia. They have a civil war and that's exciting. Beaches, sunsets, great food, but you also have... Number 10, a license for every occasion. The state of California requires a license for 198 different occupations, the most in the nation. The national average is about 96. The next closest is 122. Now, I understand things like a license to practice medicine. I get it. Construction? Get it. Pilot? Absolutely. Lawyer? Absolutely. Insurance salesman? Yeah, maybe. Real estate? Definitely. Carry and conceal permit? Yeah, I understand that one too. But in California, you need a license or certification for everything. Hot dog vendor? Yep. Yoga instructor? Yep. Tanning salon worker? Yep. Gardener? Better get a certification. You want to fill balloons with helium? Get a certification. If you want to clean someone's swimming pool, you better be certified. If they ever find a good enough explanation on why breastfeeding needs a license, they will, and pregnant women will be doing 20-hour training courses and paying their $200 and $75 for recertification if you let your breastfeeding license lapse between kids. They are ridiculous. Number 9, tickets. The state of California issues some of the most expensive traffic tickets in the nation, and all the cities and counties have followed suit with their own premium style tickets. Speaking of premiums, when you factor in DMV fees and insurance premiums and tickets and all that stuff, California is the most expensive state to own a car. Now, last time I mentioned this, a guy said, I own a 2018 Jeep in Arizona, and you're trying to tell me that if someone owns like a Honda Accord in California, it's more expensive? Then he followed it up with, come on, man, we're not that dumb. My response was, nah, dude, it's just you. But yes, with all the fees, regulations, and tickets, it sucks to drive in California. Number 8, state employee pay. The average pay for a California state worker has risen by 100% from 2005 to 2012 and 120% from 2012 to 2015. Now, that is great if you're one of those state employees, but it's terrible news for the residents that have to pay their salaries and their pensions through taxes and whatnot. Now, this isn't a knock on the employees. You have to make that kind of money to live in this state, and I don't think in the history of man has a middle-class worker ever turned down more money from their job. Now, there's a lot that goes into this subject that I don't have time for in this, 10-15 minute video. But I did read an article a couple years back about how the reason these salaries are so high, or at least how it got started, is because during the dot-com boom of the late 1990s, the state negotiated with the unions during the time that California had more money coming in than they knew what to do with, really. Well, that bubble burst, which meant less income from taxes, but they still had their commitments. Now, things have happened since then, but that was the beginning of the situation they're in, according to this article. Now, like I said, tons of other go into really broad brushing it, but that's one thing that has to do with it. It's kind of strange. Number 7, childhood poverty. Since 2007, the number of children living in poverty in the state of California has steadily increased. At the rate the poverty is growing in California, they could theoretically pass Mississippi in poverty by 2025. You know you're in bad shape when you're gaining ground on Mississippi in sucking. This stat is just as bad as it sounds. 59% of all students attending California public schools now qualify for free or reduced price school lunches. To qualify, the family's income must be around 30% lower than the poverty line. In the 1990s, 10% of the students qualified. Now, almost 60%. Number 6. Regulations up the yazoo. The amount of regulations in the state of California is a thing of legend and has been forever. The amount of departments that have these regulations is so bad people have to hire professionals to help them navigate the insane amount of bureaucracy. This just makes it impossible to operate a business in California. That's like a fact. Years ago, Mayor Richard Riordan, who was a banker and a businessman before becoming the mayor, said that he had to go to 4 agencies and wait over 120 days to get a palm tree he purchased planted in front of his business prior to becoming the mayor. Now, the funny thing is, we have palm trees everywhere in Los Angeles. It's not like he was trying to introduce a non-native species or something like that. Palm trees are everywhere. Took 120 days to get it put in there. To this date, Riordan remains the most recent Republican to serve as the mayor of Los Angeles. The Milken Institute did a study and found the operating costs of a business in California are almost 25% higher than the national average. The state of California is the worst when it comes to the small business failure rate, and that's from 2010 to 2016. It was 69% higher than the national average during that time. They also have 4 out of 5 cities in the category of top 5 worst places for a small business in the United States. That's crazy. Number 5, the traffic. California has 3 cities in the top 5 for the worst traffic in the country. Now, everyone complains about traffic. Nobody likes traffic, but it's just become a way of life. California takes it to a new level. It's not an uncommon thing for a resident in Los Angeles, San Francisco, or San Jose to spend an hour commuting to and from work. An hour each way. It's 2 extra hours onto each day. It's a total of 10 hours a week stuck in traffic. What's really sick about this is that there's a ton of people that spend much longer than that hour. The traffic is the number 4 most cited reason for leaving California, according to the Mover study. Now, this is where we get some dude that tells us that it ain't that bad. He only spends 30 minutes each way. Well, congratulations. I didn't make this video with you specifically in mind. Stop typing, keep driving. Number 4, quality of life. Now, if you've been following this channel long enough, you know that there's this stat they rate cities and states with called quality of life. This stat takes things like poverty, housing affordability, how well the state educates the students from preschool through high school, the economy, and the state government's transparency, integrity, and fiscal stability. There are a few other stats, but that's the main crook of it. California sucks. California is ranked dead last. That's 50 out of 50 people in quality of life. Number 49 was New Jersey, by the way. Ask any Californian and they will tell you that the state government is horrible. If they don't, or they try and defend it, call somebody that cares about that person because their mind isn't right. Some say this is why California legalized weed. So some of the people would get so high they wouldn't realize how bad the government is. Number 3. Pollution. California has bad everything when it comes to pollution and the environment in general. It's dirty pretty much everywhere, the water quality sucks, and it has 8 of the 10 most polluted cities by ozone or air quality, whichever you want to call it. They're different, but they're kind of the same. All the while having the strictest regulations in the country right behind Oregon. How does that work? Or how is it not working? If you have all these regulations, where's the results? Here's an idea. If you put regulations in place, A, make sure they make sense, and B, make sure you have people in place to enforce them, instead of just enough people to use the regulations to generate revenue for the state through fines. It's that simple. That whole thing with California always just blew me away. They had the strictest laws about everything when it came to pollution. Growing up there, the water quality at the ocean, I lived right by the ocean, was always in bad shape. But we always heard that they have these strict rules. Where's the results? Stupid. Number 2, utility companies are horrible. Utility companies have always irritated me. The rates are always too high. They were since as far back as I can remember, and that's pretty much everywhere. That's why everyone hates the utility companies. The water quality in Los Angeles, where I grew up, was just a little bit better than Tijuana's, which isn't saying much, and it seemed like the people that were running all the utility companies were just plain dumb. Now, back before I left California, I had a friend who'd worked at one of the water companies in LA. I think he was there about 10 years at the time. The company decided to hire an Indian company that would bring in their own employees to do his job, and they'd, let everyone go. Here's the kicker. If you wanted any sort of severance, you had to stay on and help train the person that was replacing you for half price. Another one of the power companies in the 1990s was facing some costly repairs to be in compliance with some new environmental laws that had come into play. As we have already learned, that doesn't always work out. They couldn't afford it. They didn't have the money to do it. So one of their spokesmen actually said when he was talking in the city council that he didn't think it was fair to the shareholders and the investors years for the company to take out a loan to cover these upgrades and repairs. So instead, they would treat it like they had been undercharging customers for 5 years and send all their customers the bill for the difference. Genius. The downside was, in that press conference or that meeting, he admitted some people would see bills for like $5,000. So, as you can imagine, the protests started like 15 minutes later. It didn't go through. They didn't charge people back. That was the stupidest thing I ever heard. And more recently, the utilities have had to shut off the power for hundreds of thousands of people because of the chance of wildfires. The state's infrastructure is so horrible that they have to do things like that. And then every single time there's an earthquake, they always call it the worst ever earthquake. That's it. The worst ever earthquake. That knocks out the power for thousands of people every single time, sometimes for a day or two at a time. It's horrible. And number 1, a massive political overcorrection. Now, this one's everywhere. Political correctness has gone too far lately, but California seems to be the worst. In a lot of ways, I think this massive overcorrection is what has helped give rise to a lot of the division in this country right now. People can only be pushed so far towards change in a short amount of time before they rebel, and I think we're seeing a little rebellion here. Example, while I was working at a company here in Oregon, 2 friends that have been friends before they started working, they've known each other a long time, were discussing a hike. One friend didn't want to go on this longer hike one weekend, the other one did. The other friend that wanted to go on the longer hike said, "Don't be a sissy, just do it." That's all he said. I heard the whole thing. Someone else overheard that and filed a complaint about him, and he was written up. I got pulled into that meeting. It was BS. Of course, I acted like I didn't hear anything. Now, I understand a certain amount of political correctness is good. We don't need people just going overboard and really offending people, but it is moved beyond people actually being offended. Now the people complaining about being offended really seem like that's just how they're getting attention these days. The attention they desperately need, obviously. In the old days, we did it with talent and skills. These days, it's how offended they could be. Being offended is not a skill or a talent. Now, why is this on the list? A Southern California police department, Laguna Beach, put decals of the American flag on their cars. People complained that it was offensive and it was aggressive. They wanted them taken off. And a couple of years back, a student council at one of the state colleges wanted American flags removed from the campus because, you guessed it, it was offensive. Alright, so that is my 10 reasons why California sucks. Or failing. I haven't decided what to call this one yet. Anyway, I hope you guys got some information out of it. This is part 1. I'm gonna have another one here pretty soon. It's a little, different than I'm used to. Anyway, everybody have a great day. Be nice to each other.